Hello again, we're back for another video, and this time we're going to be moving on to the Daikara Mountains. And if we have some time, we'll probably do maybe the start of Dreadfell, or we might try doing the Temporal Rift, which is a bonus dungeon in Daikara, but I'm not sure if we're going to be able to handle it, so we'll see when we get there. Also, something I forgot to do is, since we finished the end of the monastery, or not the monastery, excuse me, the cemetery, we found that pouch of bone giant dust we needed, so we're going to go over there real quick and get our free 2 class points. That is unfortunate. Every time you complete an alchemist quest, it automatically completes another alchemist quest, and you can't get that reward anymore. And unfortunately, the alchemist quest that got completed was the one for the 2 generic points. So we're not going to be able to get those. It's okay, because we're not really a generic point heavy character, but I would have preferred to have gotten both rewards. Now we're going to go for the 3 strength, 3 constitution elixir he has, and it looks like he just needs a mummy bone for that. And I know where to get one, but we won't be able to get it for a while. Daikara Mountains is a lot like ToME was. Its primary enemies are frost and lightning-based dragons, as well as these snow giants. Dragons are the primary enemy here, as well as the last boss of the zone, so if you do have any means of killing dragons more easily, such as getting the Drake's Bane on a 200 damage character, you do pretty easily here. Cursed characters with the Predator tree would probably want to tag a dragon the first time they see one on this map, because it's going to be the second most common enemy next to the giants. Okay, we've had a unique enemy here, the Fragmented Essence of Harkorzun. There'll be 5 of them on this map. They have a grapple attack, but otherwise they're not terribly difficult to deal with. They can move through stone, though, as they're an Earth Elemental type enemy, kind of like Zorns. You're taking a lot of damage from these giants. Okay, once you've killed all of the fragmented essences, The full boss of Harkozun will appear. He's a unique enemy, a gigantic demon composed of elemental earth, resembling a twisted Zarin, but much, much larger. He's not terribly hard. I think he has some stone damage attacks, and he doesn't take a lot of damage, but I've never really had any difficulty with killing him. You get an unlock for stone magic once you've killed him, and he also has a drop that he'll most often drop, which is a pair of gloves. The gloves have a lot of armor on them and have knockback and disarm immunity. It's also pretty good for brawler characters who get a bonus to grappling when they have them equipped, but I don't think I'm going to use them. I have enough armor from other pieces that I don't think it's going to be terribly useful. The giants here are mostly easy. There's some giants that can cast lightning, and there's some that can throw boulders, and the ones that throw boulders are probably the most dangerous because they can confuse you. Ideally, you want to have high mental save when you come here, or a infusion that will cure mental, or high confusion immunity. There's one type of vault... Wait, what? Okay, I thought we got a duplicate artifact there, which I've only seen happen a couple of times, but no, we didn't. This is a sling that normally drops in Dreadfell. It's not very good for us like any ranged weapon because we're not really going for that. But for a ranged character, this would actually be pretty nice, especially a halfling since it has such a large boost to luck on it. It also... Wow, was that 20 defense? Oh, 10 defense. That's still a lot. Usually don't get defense on weapon slots. Now, I'm hoping we're going to find a snow giant vault here somewhere so I can show you how it works. But I'm not sure if we're going to run into one while we're here. Okay, here's the entrance to the Temporal Rift. It's a bonus dungeon, kind of within the dungeon. We're going to come back here after we've cleared the next map. Something to keep in mind in this dungeon is that at any time, I can really easily get overwhelmed, especially in these wide open spaces. I can take bigger risks than most players will be able to because of how good my gear has gotten and because Bulwark is so good at defense. But I would recommend using a lot of caution when you proceed into areas like this, because it can potentially get very bad very quickly. And this is the last boss of the area. Rantha the Worm. She's an ice dragon. She has an ice dragon or ice breath attack. She has some knockback abilities. She gets icy skin, which gives her bonus armor and makes me take damage when I hit her. And she also tends to run away when she gets low on health. She can also freeze you in place, but we have very high stun resistance, so that shouldn't be a problem. She dropped a pretty nice dagger called Star, though we're not going to be able to use it because we don't have the right stats for it. I would almost use that over what I have equipped if I could equip it, but... And there's 3 luminous horrors here. When you get in situations like that, where you have multiple casters in a tunnel and it's not really safe to escape, just make sure you keep your regeneration and fusions on at all times, or have some means of reducing the damage as much as possible. Even with small amounts of damage, it can all add up very quickly, especially if it's coming from enemies that you have no means of dealing with. Now we're going to go to the Temporal Rift. Once we're in the Temporal Rift, we can't leave, and this place is really dangerous, and I'm not sure if I'm going to make it through here, so this could be the end of my video series, but I really hope not. These enemies are temporal elementals. They sort of blink around. They do a lot of damage with paradox attacks, and they can CC you for multiple turns, though when they do, they can't attack you, so that can actually be kind of beneficial if you're waiting for something to come off cooldown. We're in a good position here, where they can kind of funnel into us. They'll teleport around, and eventually one will teleport nearby. When that happens, we just need to be careful about killing them before they can teleport us away. If they get line of sight on us for too long, they will teleport us away, and we may end up in some place that's less safe to be. Strength should be completely maxed probably in the next 2 levels. Once you get a point to base 6, or a stat to base 60, it can't really go up anymore, except by escort quests and potions and things like that. Once we finish out strength, we're going to max constitution, and then every point we get after will go into dexterity, because dexterity raises our defense, our accuracy, and it also boosts the damage of our shield through, not shield, excuse me, it boosts our Rippo stability, and it also increases our armor through shield wall, and scales up a few other talents, which is going to be pretty useful. Now that we don't really have anything we want to spend a lot of points in right now, I'm going to open up the Battle Tactics tree. The first talent is Greater Weapon Focus, which is an active ability which gives you the ability, when you activate it, to get an extra attack 10% of the time for the next 5 turns. This happens with all attacks, including things like Shield Slam, so it can do a lot of damage, and it can be a really useful talent, and something we're going to want to raise up. Step Up gives us a 1000% movement bonus for 1 turn, after you've killed a foe and the chance increases with each point you put into it, maxing out at 100%. 1,000 movement speed over one turn doesn't sound like a lot, but you have to realize that your movement speed sort of splits your turns. So when you have a 1,000% movement speed bonus, it actually is split over 10 turns. So you can make 10 steps before it falls off. Now, once you've taken an action, it automatically ends, but it can be used to close the distance between casters, for example, which makes it a very useful ability. The next one after that is Bleeding Edge, which is an offensive ability that we're probably not going to use. It actually, you know, that does do a lot of damage. We might use that, but I don't think I'll put more than 1 point in it. And the last talent is True Grit, which locks us in play. No, excuse me, it consumes a lot of stamina, but makes it so we get damage resistance and raises our global damage resistance cap the lower life we get. So it can be a nice thing to use in a last-ditch effort. But it's also something we're not going to be putting points into until much later. So we're going to focus on maxing these two talents, starting with Step Up, and then we'll go back and max Greater Weapon Focus. We also have generic points that we can spend, and we can spend them on pretty much anything now. I think I'm going to worry about raising Vitality the rest of the way from now. We don't really have to worry about stuns, so Unflinching Resolve, while nice, isn't immediately necessary, but reducing the duration of diseases, poisons, and wounds would be really helpful. It also increases our healing modifier when we're low on health, and we're really dependent on regeneration. Alright, the next 3 maps should look familiar because they're places we've been for into the game, and even the enemies here that we're going to face. In this particular case, we're fighting Ben Cruthdar again, who was the guy we killed in a lumberjack camp, except he's much more powerful now. He's a much higher level character. What we're basically fighting is corrupted versions of characters from our own timeline. And the next map takes us back to Daikara Mountains, except it's a different version of it. This version is filled with horrors, including enemies like this Void Horror here. The Void Horror causes various temporal effects, summons its own clones, and is pretty volatile in that it'll explode when it dies. And we're fighting another version of Rantha here. She's actually probably going to be easier than the last one we fought, because she's only ranked unique. And now we're at the last level, which is Lake of Nur again. And here's our bosses. There's 2 of them. Chronolith Crone and Chronolith Twin. These 2 characters will kind of share a health pool. So once we've killed one, the other one will almost be dead. So for our trouble, we get the loot of 2 bosses, as well as an item called the Rune of the Rift, which is a CC rune. It will remove an enemy from time. I believe it's based off of your spell power, and it's not really going to be great for us, but I'll hold on to it just in case I find a use for it later on. We also found a darkness-infused staff, which we're not going to be able to use, as well as a deep black lantern, which I'm actually going to equip immediately, and I'll show you what those items are. The items we got are the Staff of Destruction, which gives us multiple damage and boosts to different elements, a large spell power increase, and an increase to spell crit chance. It's a really nice staff. We're not going to use it, obviously, because we're not spellcasters, but if we were playing a spellcaster, this would be an amazing find. The other item we got was Umbraphage, which I think is one of the best lights in the game. It increases your darkness resistance, changes resistance penetration, and increases darkness and light damage. Not going to be useful to us, obviously. It also gives us damage affinity, which means that we're going to heal 20% of the darkness damage that we take. So it effectively gives us 40% resistance to darkness, in a sense. It also gives a bonus to Talent Mastery, Cursed Shadows, which is a doomed talent tree. Again, we're not going to use it. The mental save boost we get is nice, as is the large amount of light radius on this, +5. So it's going to be a very useful item to us, and certainly more useful than the Summertide File, which is what we've been using so far, which only had a bonus to light resistance. The healing mod will be missed, but we get it from other sources, and we're doing okay on healing for right now. We'll hold on to it, though, just in case we need it later on. We should have enough time to get our feet wet in Dreadfell and do the first few levels. Dreadfell is the Tier 3 dungeon. It's basically the entirety of Tier 3 dungeons. It comes after the first dungeons you do in the starting zone and after the Tier 2 dungeons. And it's generally recommended to be done between levels 16 and 30. I've had a character do it as late as level 38 before by farming four bar portals to gain extra levels. It can be a very difficult dungeon to get through. The enemies here are all going to be fairly high-level undead. They can have some very irritating abilities. There will also be enemies here that can spawn here that haven't been able to spawn in the other dungeons, that have some very, very nasty abilities behind them. There's also escorts that can appear here, which can be really hard to keep alive. Everything will pretty much make a beeline for your escorts, and the damage that they do is very high, and most of them don't have ranged abilities. Our opening room here in particular was pretty brutal, because we got multiple rares in the same game with ranged attacks. And our escort was lost. Unfortunately, there was nothing we could do to really keep him alive at that point. All of our remaining abilities were on cooldown. Over here we have one of the unique enemies that can spawn in Dreadfell. Borfaz the Broken. He's a ghoul bulwark, and he has all the same abilities as bulwarks, and he also has a very nasty heal ability, which is similar to what all ghouls have, which is Retch. With this guy, you want to get him as far away from his Retch as possible as soon as he drops it. You also have to be mindful of the fact that because he's a bulwark, he's going to have all the same abilities we do, including Counter-Strike. He's really a case of slow and steady wins the race. You will take a lot of damage over time, but his burst damage isn't very high, pretty much just like ours. So you just have to wait until you've burned him down enough to kill him. And we got a shield off of him, the Black Mesh, which I've never been able to use before because I never find it on bulwarks. It's a bit better than our current shield. It has more damage on it, higher block value, higher physical crit chance, more defense. I think not as much armor, but that's okay because we have plenty. It also has darkness resistance and blight resistance and higher talent granted block, as well as some stamina each turn, which is going to be useful for us because we are kind of low on stamina regen. Alright, we're done with the first floor. Let's move on to the second. Now, the loot quality here is much higher than we've seen in any of the other dungeons up to this point. Pretty much everything in here could be really good, and you can start finding the tier 4 artifacts in here, which is the next tier up from what we've been finding in the last few dungeons. And they can be quite good. Some of these items are some of the best items you'll find in the game, and you can find them as early as Dreadfell. And generally we want to leave Dreadfell with as many positive items as possible, so we have an easy time getting into the rest of the game. These boots have some really nice resistances on it, and we're not using any arcane abilities, so I'm going to equip them. Okay, it seems I ran out of space there for a second, but I haven't done anything in the game since then, thankfully. We just found an artifact, so let's take a look at that. We sure are finding a lot of nice two-handed weapons in this game. This particular one is the golden three-edged sword, the Truth. It's meant for mind slayers, but it's really good for any character that can use two-handed weapons, because it has an absolutely incredible amount of darkness and light damage on it. 80 damage a hit just from elemental effects, plus the 64 base power, and the chance to stun or confuse the target on every swing. This is a really nice sword if you're using a two-handed character, and you'll usually find it in Dreadfell. The Master has funny little notes laying around on all the signs. The Master being the last boss of Dreadfell, and it's worth reading all of them when you get here. Okay. Looks like this guy is either a Reaver or a Corruptor. I'm not really sure which, but I do know that we're going to want to get rid of him quickly. nothing interesting on this floor. And nothing we're really going to want to... Ooh, actually. No, I think I'd prefer the crit. These are a new glove ego that was added in the last patch. You pay a hefty price in mental saves, but you get a huge amount of bonus damage, as you can see here. That's almost 40 bonus damage every attack. It's really nice for dual-wield characters, and I think that ego might end up getting nerfed in the next patch. We are almost certain to lose this escort. Yeah. That was just a really bad spawn. Generally, if you're making a character who's kind of dependent on an escort reward, don't really count on Dreadfell to give you those escorts, because you're really likely to lose them here. The layout isn't great for keeping escorts alive to begin with, and a lot of the enemies can be really rough to handle. Like this one in particular, a Dread, they're one of the harder enemies to catch, or to hit, and they also have some confuse effects that can be pretty nasty if you don't have very high saves. Now this is something interesting, and you really only ever see this in Dreadfell, and I think much later on you might see it in one other dungeon. I'm gonna need to actually get it on my bar first, though. Move that down there. This is a hidden door, and you have to dig to it. And you won't always, but a good amount of the time, you'll end up being put in a situation where you do. But this door leads to a vault. And vaults in Dreadfell are nasty. As you can see, this boss is level 56. Or not boss, this is just a regular enemy. He's 25, 26, he's 30 levels higher than me. And a lot of the vaults in here are kind of dumb to go into. But thankfully, if we do run into something we can't handle, we can always escape. The enemies we're going to run into in this particular Dreadfell vault, are going to be horrors and demons, and those are pretty easy for us to handle. Dreadfell vaults can contain all kinds of enemies, often undead. Some vaults will have vampires exclusively. There's a vault that has dragons that can be really, really, really rough. This particular vault, though, just has a lot of demons in it, including, say, a forge giant. I don't know if I've ever run into one of these, but he's got a lot of health, and I suspect this is going to be a little rough. Wow, he is a little more difficult than I was expecting. And that's our first death. Wow. That didn't go well. Oh man, that was not pleasant at all. We are going to want to get out of here quickly. So we're just going to pop our movement fusion and try and stay away from that guy. The moral of this story is, stay out of Daikara Vault, or stay out of Dreadfell Vaults. I tell myself that every time I play this game, and I never take my own advice. And I usually lose a lot of characters that way. Something to keep in mind is that you can always come back later in the game to clear an area if it was too difficult for you. So I'm going to save the rest of this floor for another time, because some of it's going to be inaccessible, and I don't want to lose another life. It looks like we've actually managed to keep this escort alive long enough to make it to its exit portal. And we will take a dexterity bonus, because we can't really use anything else he's got. I think I'll tempt fate again and do another vault. I think this might be one of the ones I can actually do. Or maybe not. This is a dragon vault. So we're gonna wait and see if we can get any of these to follow us down here. Because we have pretty good cold resistance. That wasn't too bad. Okay, that cleared one half of the vault, and now we have another half to go. If these had been fire drakes, we would have left immediately, because the fire drakes are much harder to kill, and they don't have a lot of fire resistance. But with the cold drakes, this wasn't too bad, even with them being much higher level than us. Actually, no, these aren't. we must have gotten a vault that was kind of the same level, which is a relief. And that takes care of that, though we didn't really get anything worth our time. A lot of experience, at least, which you do get from vaults, because there tends to be a lot of enemies in there. And we found a unique quiver of arrows, and we found a unique whip on the previous floor. Neither of those items are going to be useful for us. The whip is nice for dex-based characters, but it's an exotic weapon, so the standard weapon proficiency talents won't up its damage very much. The Quiver of the Sun is a light damage quiver that will shoot a beam through all targets, so it's actually really nice. It's a tier 4 arcane item. We don't have any use for it, but I will hold on to it in case I find the pair of gloves that will eat arcane items. This room is kind of a mini-vault that will appear in Dreadfell. You don't get a warning when you open the doors, but they can be as dangerous as a normal vault because the enemy density is so high. You want to treat this entire room like it was a caster, because every time you encounter this room, there will be casters in the room, and they can do a lot of damage at range from the doorway. And undead characters, unlike most casters, will ignore line of sight on their own guys, because they don't mind killing their own units. We had a unique spawn here. He's a halfling slinger and a skeleton, and he has all the abilities that a skeleton player character would have, in that he can reconstruct his body, he has a shield. He's quite difficult to deal with. He also has very high dexterity, very high defense. He can be hard to kill, and he can be hard to get a beat on. He also loses. Looks like we got unique bullets and the pair to the dagger we found earlier, which was Star. If you have both of them, you get a set bonus, but I've never managed to complete both the sets, so I really don't know what benefits it would have if you equipped both. It doesn't matter on this character, obviously, since we're not playing a dagger user, but it would have been nice if we were playing a rogue to find both of them. He also dropped unique bullets, which again aren't going to be useful for us, much like the arrows aren't, because obviously we're not playing a ranged character. Alright, now we're done with this half of Daikara, and our next video will continue to the further half of the instance, and then we might do a bonus dungeon if we have some extra time. Thanks for watching.